So I have to ask you a question. I need to know who my audience is for this. Some of you aren't going to get this analogy, and I apologize. I need you to be honest. I need you not to worry about the people next to you when you raise your hand. How many of you know what Star Trek is? How many of you watch Star Trek? Okay, kind of lost a few hands. How many of you know that there are different types of Star Trek? Okay, we got the original series, the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager. You got the new television, the new movies that they have, what they call it, the Kelvin timeline. Then they got the new series that's on that's not Star Trek, but it's kind of like Star Trek, and they call it Star Trek, but it doesn't seem like the Star Trek that I grew up with, so I've got that old school mentality. It's not my Star Trek, it's not Star Trek. There's lots of different Star Trek out there. And when we're talking about this pain, every time I think about this, I think about a specific scene from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, okay? And if you're a Star Trek fan, you'll understand this. If you don't, I apologize. But there's this guy who's a tailor on the space station, and his name's Garrick. And he's not a big, tough guy. He's kind of a spy. He's really, everything he says is double talk and sarcasm. And these, the Klingons, you know what the Klingons are? They're the big warrior types. Well, he's giving these Klingons a hard time. They come into a shop and they beat him up. And he's laying in the doctor's office, and in Star Trek, the doctors, they can do miracle stuff. I mean, he was all beat up and they make his face, like, you can't even tell he was in a fight. No scars, no damage, you know. And so they're asking if he's going to press charges against the Klingons, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, why? He said, well, they might have hurt my face, but thanks to the doctor's wonderful care, you can barely tell. But I left some words that were going to sting their soul for years. He was mocking them and taunting them and saying things that he thought was going to cause them more emotional damage than the physical pain that they caused him. And a lot of times, that's how bullies react to emotional pain. They lash out. You know, some people might say that's a less intelligent person that reacts in rage, but some people just have that kind of rage, that kind of problem, that kind of issue, where when they're hurt, they lash out. Some of us do it physically, some of us do it emotionally, but when it happens, that's how we react. You know, you can push me to the point, I can be manipulated enough that I will strike out physically at some point. If you come to me and push me, I might be able to back up. If you push Angie, we're fighting. Right there on the spot. I don't care who you are. If you want to test that, push Angie after church. It'll be my last day as pastor, I promise. Okay? I have that like protective instinct. You push my little brother, you're in trouble. You touch one of my kids, you're in trouble. It's going to happen. I'm hardwired that way. Is it the right way to act? Absolutely not. Am I proud of it? No. But sometimes that's how we react when we encounter emotional trauma from the outside. Emotional trauma hurts a lot worse than physical. And there are emotional scars just like there are physical scars. Anyone ever see the TV where they have a knife or a sword and they want to see how sharp it is? They run over their hand to test how sharp it was. I made a big mistake one time when I was 15 years old. Grandpa had a straight razor. And for whatever reason, I decided to figure out how sharp it was. And I thought I'd just run it over the tip of my thumb. Oh. I immediately had to take my t-shirt off and wrap my thumb because I was bleeding so bad. And I still have a scar on the top of my thumb to remind me, you are a fool to rub a straight razor over the top of your thumb. Now, physically, I know that, but the pain is gone. You can touch my scar, you can poke it, you could put a needle on it. It's not going to hurt my scar anymore. But the emotional pain that I feel when I think about as soon as I mentioned that, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Because I remember what that pain was like. At first there was no pain, it was that sharp. Oh, look at my, and now I'm holding my thumb as close to my body as I can. I took my t-shirt off and wrapped it around my thumb and was just squeezing my thumb together because I was going to tell my mom I was going to go get stitches. I'm still afraid of a doctor like that today. But pain makes us react in different ways. In pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain, as well as physical pain, is there to let us know that there is something wrong. Do we understand that? So when you're feeling emotional pain, and people are just like, well, you need to deal with it, you need to be a man and take care of that or whatever. We have those types of pain for a reason, because something is wrong, just like physical pain. When we put our hand too close to the fire and we start to feel pain, that's to remind us that, we are not supposed to touch the fire. The same thing's true with emotional pain. And when we've been exposed to something and we didn't realize it hurt at first, and then we wrap our spiritual shirt around it and we're holding on to it like, why did I go through that? We have to grow. There are lessons that need to be learned from pain. And not all pain that's caused to you, I think that a lot of people would say, well, God wants you to go through this pain. But don't forget that we Armenians believe that human beings have a free will to choose. And certain people can choose to do something to hurt you that God does not intend for you to go through. I hear the stupidest things. I hear politicians saying something stupid like, well, this woman was meant to be raped. It had to be God's will. That is nonsense. If you believe that, we need to have a talk in my office. Because God does not intend for anyone to be raped. A sick human being that gives in to their lust and sin and their emotional pain, they perform those types of acts. It's not God's will to have that happen to anybody. Things happen in life that God might allow to happen because of the sinful world, the sinful natures that we have. But the pain, some of the pain that you're going through is not necessarily intended for you to go through. However, if we look at Joseph's life, how many of you know the story of Joseph? Yeah, a lot of you know the story, right? I'm going to share with you briefly. Joseph, good kid, young kid. He's mom and dad's favorite. Parents don't have a favorite child. I'll tell you why. He was their favorite, and he was bragging about it. He had a special coat that they didn't have, and he's bragging about it. His brothers get jealous and say, hey, let's kill this guy. See how much mom and dad like him then? So instead of killing him, they sell him into slavery. He goes into slavery. He serves at Potiphar's home. He's falsely accused of rape there, sent to jail. There's a couple guys that try to commit a conspiracy to hurt the Pharaoh. He interprets their dreams, lets them know, hey, you're going to go back. Hey, you're not going to make it. Sorry for your bad luck. Remember me. The guy goes back to the Pharaoh's service, doesn't remember Joseph until the Pharaoh has a dream. Said, oh, I remember this guy that I left in jail. So here's this guy who did nothing wrong, kidnapped by his brothers. They were going to kill him, sold into slavery, falsely put into prison. How many of you would have given up on your faith at this point? Like, does God still love me if He allows me to be a slave? God allowed me to be in prison. I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, we get indignant if someone misquotes us on Facebook. So eventually, Joseph solves the problem. He interprets the Pharaoh's dream that, hey, we're going to have 7 good years of prosperity, 7 years of the plague upon the land, and there's going to be drought, and there's not going to be food. We need to store up our food. So he puts him in charge of the land. They store up food for 7 years. The famine hits the land, and everyone's without food and water. They all have to come. It made Egypt a world power because of his faithfulness to God. And so his brothers have to come in and beg for food for the family, and he ends up going this whole ordeal where he gets his dad, and he finally reveals who he is. They're all happy. And then years go by. His dad's life is actually extended because he realizes he's got new grandchildren. Grandchildren keep you alive, folks. Okay? You get new grandchildren. Enjoy that. Celebrate. Don't sit at home and wait for something to happen. Go spend time with your grandchildren. Do something. Be an active part of their life. I have memories from all 4 of my grandparents that will be with me all the rest of my life for them wanting to spend time with me. Anyway, that's a totally different sermon. So his father dies, and all of his brothers come up to him and they're like, okay, there's no more mercy left. He's going to kill us now. He has all this power, all this authority. We did wrong to him. And he says these words, and now I want you to think about your emotional pain. What you intended for me was evil, but what God intended it to be was good. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that God wanted him to go through each and every one of those aspects. God probably didn't want his brothers to try to kill him. God probably didn't want his brother to sin. But because of what happened in those circumstances, God was able to take that and redeem that pain and save his family and heal his family and forgive his family. And there was peace. Emotional pain and spiritual pain takes a lot longer to heal. We're going to look at a couple of instances where Jesus encounters people with emotional pain, and you cannot find, and I'll challenge any of you, I would like to see one of you come to me and say, where Jesus laid hands on someone and he healed their emotional pain instantly. There is a process that we have to go through with that type of healing. You can't just take it away because you still feel. And there's this forgiveness lesson that so many of us have to go through that we're not willing to let go of. We want to hold on to our anger. It's our ability to get revenge. We have to get even. That idea that I told you in the beginning that if you hurt my family, I was going to hurt you back. That is not the right type of mentality. That is not a Jesus type of mentality. What would Jesus say? Turn the other cheek. Spiritually, this idea of forgiving people, emotionally, this idea of forgiving, it lets you free from a prison that you're held in your mind and your spirit. And when you're praying to God and your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, you can't figure out what's going on. A lot of times it's because we have unforgiveness in our heart. We're unable to forgive ourselves. We're unable to forget the people that hurt us. That pulls at us like emotional baggage, like this chain that weighs us down. And I want to read a couple of Bible stories. And the two main ones are in the book of John. The book of John, there are physical healings that take place in this. We really have John as an emotional guy. How did he describe himself? He was the disciple that Jesus loved. He had this passion about him. There's a reason that a lot of pastors say, if you want to get saved, read the book of John, because there's a lot of passion in there. It really pulls at your heartstrings and your emotions. And I want you to kind of look at a couple of these underlying stories where there's emotional pain that we really don't think about because we put ourselves into different scenarios. And then the first one's in John chapter 4. This is the Samaritan woman at the well. It says, now that Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples had gone to the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asked you for this drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming to draw water from the well. So understand that she still is not understanding the spiritual connection of this water. She wants the magical water that you can drink so that you never get thirsty again. And a lot of times that's how we try to meet our emotional and spiritual needs, by something physical. Boy, if you could just give me this pill that would take away all of my pain, that would be great. I don't have to deal with the symptoms, I don't have to deal with the problem because the pill takes my problem away. So give me this water that will fix me from being thirsty ever again. I won't have to come out here at noon in the heat in the middle of the day. She's going out here at noon for a reason, when it's the hottest part of the day, because she has some shame that we're going to look at. She's trying to avoid. But she goes a little further with this, just trying to understand that she's trying to fix an emotional or spiritual problem with a physical aspect. He told her, go, call your husband, and come back. And she says, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you are right. You say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. Now, there's a few things to look at here. Jesus is not judging her. Jesus does not call her a harlot. He does not call her a whore. He does not call her an adulteress. He doesn't call her any names. He just recognizes the truth of something. And he accepts her where she's at. He doesn't say, well, what you need to do is go to the temple and get right there, get married to this guy, and then I can help you. Jesus simply acknowledges the fact that she's in this very difficult situation. Now, we hear all of that, and automatically our minds go to sin, right? Oh, this woman's coming. She has some serious emotional pain. Either way you look at it. Has she been widowed 5 times? Could you imagine how painful that is? Has she been divorced 5 times? Is there a mix of divorce and widow in there? I guarantee you that she is in a ton of pain no matter what's going on. This could be caused from all kinds of, if we could understand the problem, was her father an absent father? Did she have these daddy issues that so many people have today? Why is she going from man to man to man? What is the emotional pain that's put her in this position? I mean, if she lost 5 husbands to death, could you imagine what kind of grief and burden? I mean, she doesn't want to get married this time because then she could have a 6th dead husband. We don't know the aspect of her pain, but I guarantee that no matter what, when you've been in that many broken relationships, no matter how they were broken, there is a lot of emotional pain that she is going through. And I guarantee you that before she knew who Jesus was, she felt like she was going through this alone. That no one really understood. You know, there wasn't a lot of people that went through divorce back then. So if she'd been divorced 1 or 2 of those 5 times, she's in a very awkward situation. There's not very many people that can understand what it would be like to lose that many husbands to death. She's carrying this burden around with her. And she's snide and sarcastic and doesn't understand. Her emotional pain is obvious to Jesus. The cool thing about this story is that Jesus knows her entire story. It would be difficult for us to recreate the scene. We can't go out there and sit with someone at the bench at the mall and automatically be able to recognize all of their emotional and spiritual pain. But we can recognize people who are in pain if we recognize it in ourselves. Even if we don't have Jesus' ability to know what she's going through, I can see in your eyes when you're carrying emotional baggage around with you. I can see when you have spiritual frustrations on your face. And if we're tuned in, if we're paying attention, we don't have to know the specifics to help someone go through this kind of difficult situation. She has very serious emotional pain, and I promise you that up to this point, she felt like she was going through this alone. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but the Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. And there, folks, is your difference between the Samaritans and the Jewish believers about where they did their rituals. They had the same faith, the same God, the same ancestors, but one said, this is where we worship, one said, this is where we worship. Just like modern day church, we fight over some of the stupidest things. About whether we can have drums in the service, about whether we can dance, about whether we can wear jewelry or makeup. We all worship the same God, but we want to fight and fracture ourselves, and it causes some deep-rooted problems. But that's, again, another sermon somewhere else. Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know. For salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. The woman said, I know the Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, am he. And this is, his disciples aren't around. This is the first time in the book of John that he claims to be the Messiah. There's no Jewish believers around, just her. He's just being authentic. It's just one-on-one. It's just one person's pain and another person trying to help them through their pain. How many of you would have stopped and listened to this woman's story about her 5 ex-husbands? How many of you would have been tired by the second husband and wondering where the rest of your family was to come save you from this conversation? Because we feel very uncomfortable about helping people with emotional problems for some reason. But every person in this room and every people who've ever been through these doors have spiritual and emotional pain. And some of us are afraid to talk about it. Some of us are too tough to talk about it. And we keep it inside. And it eats us alive and destroys who we are. And destroys our relationships. It destroys our relationships with our friends. It destroys it with our family. It destroys it with God. Because we won't unchain ourselves from the burdens. And then, if we won't do it ourselves, we are definitely not willing to help someone else that's carrying these types of burdens with them. Jesus didn't say, I gotta go. I'm on my way to Galilee. There are some Jewish people there that I'm trying to help, and you're not Jewish. He didn't judge her. He didn't critique her. He's trying to help her through her emotional and spiritual pain that she has. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. But no one asked, what do you want, or why are you talking with her? Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. There was more to this conversation that was recorded. He was able to tell her everything that she did. And she, when they were done with that conversation, she didn't feel inferior. She didn't feel worthless. She didn't feel like she was a shamed sinner. She felt like she was a person that had a lot of pain. And here was a man who could help her deal with that pain. Is that how the unchurched people see us today? If we were to go out there and take a poll and ask them what they think about Christians, how many of them would say, oh, they're a patient group of people that will sit down with me and help me get through my emotional pain? They won't. They'll say you're hypocrites. They'll say that you're judgmental. They'll say that you're self-righteous, that you live in an unrealistic world, that you have a bunch of rules to follow. Could this be the Messiah? They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. But he said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Then his disciples said to each other, could someone have brought him some food? My food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Don't you have a saying? It's still 4 months till the harvest. I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for the harvest. Even now, the one who reaps draws a wage in the harvest and harvests a crop of eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus the saying, one sows, another one reaps, is true. I sent you to reap what you did not work for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor. So Jesus is teaching them, this is about witnessing. This is about spiritual freedom. This is about multiple tiered things that we can look at, where God does the hard work. He does the planting. He does the watering. And then we go through and we reap the benefits of it. That's a great deal. The hard work is planting and toiling and working and protecting. The easy work is bringing in and collecting the money that comes from it. Jesus has done all the hard work for us. And then he invites us to be a part of the reward from all the hard work and toil, the sacrifice, the protection. Many of the Samaritans from the town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with him, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world." How many of us can look at our lives and say that people know who God is because of the way that we live our lives? How many of us can say that people have observed the difference in me and they know that God is real, and then they had an opportunity to experience Him hands-on, first person? This is really who God is. Because when we do, we really start this emotional healing process. And if we're not healed, if we're still hurt, if we're still carrying pain and it's obvious, people aren't going to look to us as if we have something that's special. I love to play basketball, and I can't play in the NBA. I'm 6'4", and I weigh 400 pounds, and I look like the littlest guy out there, height-wise, if you look at those guys. If you're old school like me, and you look at the Detroit Pistons, I'm the same height as Joe Dumars, who was always one of the shortest guys out there. I'm a pretty tall guy, right? Compared to those guys, they're like way up here. One of those guys that I look to call sir. No one would believe that I was ready to play in the NBA. I'm not in shape, I can't run, I'm really not that good of a shooter. I couldn't play in the NBA. And no one would believe I could play in the NBA. If we compared that to a Christian setting, and I sin, and I have a lot of pain, and I curse like a sailor, and I choose to sleep in every once in a while on Sunday too, who's going to believe that I'm really a Christian? Who's going to believe that there's really a God that has the power to forgive and to heal and to move and to change? If we are unchanged, who is going to believe that we are Christian, that we are different? If you look like the world and sound like the world and smell like the world, they're going to treat you like you're part of the world. Jesus was transcending. And He brought this emotional healing with Him. He was able to help this woman's emotional pain. He didn't touch her head and heal her pain. He set her on a path that set her free from her lifestyle. Now, a lot of us Wesleyans will say, like, well, He wants her to go and sin no more. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to have time to get there, but the woman in the well. We all know the story of the woman in the well, right? She's caught in adultery. And at the end of that story, all of us Wesleyans love the part where it tells her, go and sin no more. But what he's telling her by that is that you can be free from this lifestyle that's tearing your life apart. That's what forgiveness is about. That's what changing our lives, that's what being holy like God is holy means. It means we're set free from things that destroy us emotionally and spiritually and physically. If you commit murder, it tears your soul. There's not one person who's ever committed a murder where they plan and kill someone that has not regretted what they've done. Even people that have mental disabilities, that are sociopaths, they realize that there is something that's wrong, something that's broken in them. When we commit adultery, it's a hurt physical, spiritual, mentally, emotionally. And Jesus isn't telling her, go be perfect because I'm perfect. He's telling him, you can be set free from what's causing this pain, that's causing you to go from man to man, that's causing you to ruin marriages. One of them was married. Maybe both of them, I don't know. But she was trying to fix a physical or spiritual problem with a physical source of intimacy. Just like people drink alcohol and get drunk in order to forget about their pain. And when you see someone and they're hurting your life and they're doing this damage, and you realize it's the alcohol that's destroying them, it's the lust that's destroying them, it's the sin that corrupts and kills and destroys. When you see that in the people, it takes all of their power over you away from them. That person is acting like that because they have a God-shaped hole in their soul, and instead of putting God there, they put stuff there. Just like when I'm emotionally empty and I try to put peanut M&Ms in that hole. It makes me feel good for a few minutes until I have to get out of my recliner. My knees hurt, and my back hurts, and I'm too big to get up and get down, and I can't fit in a normal-sized car. And so it's a Band-Aid. You put a Band-Aid on a big hole that you have. It does not heal the wound. You got to refill your tanks. You got to fill them with your love language tanks. The things that build that back up inside of you that has actual meaning and healing and love and grace. And if we can help people see that it's that kind of pain that's destroying their life and they're not treating it the right way. It's like if Debbie works in the medical field. I don't know how many of the rest of you work in the medical field. If I have a migraine and I want to treat that with anti-nausea medicine, well, that's not going to do any good, right? It's not going to take my migraine away. It's not going to take my pain away. Well, we have to treat the symptoms that we have, the root cause of what's going on. Why are you having a migraine? I don't think doctors really understand a whole lot about why people have migraines. But there are different illnesses and wounds. If we have cancer, we can't treat it with heart medicine. There are treatments for the symptoms, and if you don't attack the symptoms, if you don't go to the root cause of what's going on, you're going to continue to have the pain. You're going to continue to suffer and struggle with what's going on. You have to get spiritually and emotionally healed from whatever's going on in your life. Whatever's causing the pain. What's causing the problem? A lot of people don't even figure it out. I've talked to people that are having problems in their marriage. And the guy is going from girl to girl to girl to girl, and she just wants him to stop, don't understand, what am I doing wrong that's causing him to go from girl to girl to girl? And it had nothing to do with her whatsoever. He had a problem that came from way back in his past where someone had hurt him, and he never dealt with that problem. And he couldn't get healed, and he couldn't get right, and he still can't get right because he's unwilling to figure out what caused him that pain in the first place. He just tries to fill it with other stuff. And folks, we have to help people. Not only we have to help ourselves first. Well, what does Jesus say when he talks about judging people? First, we have to get the speck out of our own eye before we can help someone find the plank in theirs. We have emotional pain that we have to deal with. And if you want to help someone that's going through emotional pain, you have to find out what's going on here first and then help them second. Because we are not prepared to help someone until we're able to recognize and identify what's going on. What causes you to sin? What causes you to stumble? What causes you to struggle? Where is your fear coming from? Where is your hate coming from? It comes from somewhere. Identifying it. And then it's a process of working through it. Jesus can set you free from it. But there's a process. There's forgiveness that has to be involved. There's time, there's patience, there's praying, there's guidance, there's mentor, there's talking. There are all kinds of things that we can do to help alleviate these things that are going on and get better from them and heal from them that we're so afraid to deal with today. And sometimes we need some hard truth. Sometimes we need someone to look at us and say, you've got to stop doing this because it's destroying your life. And it's hard to do that with family. Sometimes family will just blow us off. You got to stop drinking. It's going to ruin your life. I can't. Drinking is the only way that I can cope. It's the only thing that stopped me from having a heart attack. But there is someone out there. There is a Savior out there that has just the right words for them to hear to get them to identify what's hurting them and to start a forgiveness and to start this path that leads them to redemption and healing and freedom and their chains being broken. I didn't get near anywhere I wanted to go with my sermon today. Because the idea of being able to forgive people that hurt us becomes so important. And there are so many people that I've tried to help that have been unable to forgive the person that's hurt them, that's been unable to leave that at the altar, that's been unable to get past that pain, and unwilling to do it no matter how that pain occurred. But I tell you folks, forgiveness is a choice and not an emotion. Forgiveness is a choice. When you choose to forgive someone, it might not take all your pain away, But as you strive to seek that forgiveness or give that forgiveness or to let go of that, there is a healing that takes place that is like nothing other that's ever happened in your entire life besides maybe the first time you surrender your heart to Jesus. It's liberating. It's freeing. You no longer are held in pain, in a prison of your mind, of your soul, where every time you think of, say, hear, anything that's related to that person, that it causes you pain. And I want to encourage you today, and as we get there next week, choose to forgive the people who have hurt you. Choose to forgive the people that have done you wrong. Jesus said that when we're praying, if we have anything against someone, or we've done anything to hurt someone, we need to stop our prayer and go make it right with them. That's how important it is. Don't just tell me about it. Go do something about it. Seek forgiveness of others and forgive people. If you can't forgive people who sin against you, then your Heavenly Father will not forgive you your sins. There's a reason why, because it is God's to judge. We judge people way too much. We are judgy people. And Christians can be the worst. We are judgy people. Stop that. Stop judging people. Stop looking at people and trying to figure out if you're better than them or worse than them. Stop trying to figure out if your sin is better than theirs or worse than theirs. Pain is pain. And when you cause and inflict it on someone else, or it's inflicted on yourself, no matter whether it's your agreeable type of pain, whether it's subjective and think, oh, well, anyone can deal with that. I mean, all I did was call him fatso. You should be able to deal with that. Pain is pain. And when you cause pain for someone else, you need to seek forgiveness for that. And when people have hurt you, you need to give forgiveness for that, not for them. Forgiving doesn't free them, it frees you. It frees you from the prison that you're being held in spiritually and emotionally. Let's pray together.